be free from China's coercive and unfair trade policies. Our security depends on it. This is clip 61. Go ahead and run it. 61 if you can. Thank you. So they met and they discussed the importance of the Indo-Pacific region. If you type in Indo-Pacific region on X, you will find post after post, recent posts from major U.S. leaders, major international leaders as well, talking about this importance. And it's something that started to creep up with even Schumer and Mike Johnson early. It's one of the first things, I believe, when Mike Johnson gave his acceptance speech or his first speech after he was made the Speaker of the House, he came out and just started talking about how important it was to protect our interests in the Indo-Pacific region. And on the same day, Chuck Schumer gave a separate speech where he talked about the importance of protecting our interests in the Indo-Pacific region. So I think that the Democrats and the Republicans are kind of on the same page about this crisis, but they have completely adverse, just perverse views on what policies need to be instituted. Because keep in mind, we've got a similar problem here in the United States that China has and Russia has and Japan has and South Korea has with the population situation. Our birth rate is only 1.7 children per one woman. It has to be at least 2.1 in order for a society to sustain itself and expand. And even breaking even isn't good. Treading water is the same as drowning. And so the Democrats, Schumer explicitly stated this, their policy, rather than to figure out how to get people to have families and have children in the United States of America, Western civilization, American values, their policy was just to import 10, 20, 30 million illegal migrants into the United States to replace the existing demographic, which is aging out. Literally replacement migration. That's what they advocated for. And I think for the first time since 1857, in the last 4 years, we had more people come into the United States from outside of the United States than people born in the United States. First time in like almost 200 years. And so what the Democrats want to do is they want to import this replacement migration rather than solving the inflation problem, because if they solve the inflation problem, they have to cut spending. If they cut spending, then they lose their racket, their scheme. So they are literally selling out America for the sake of importing a new tax-paying base that has completely different values, un-American values, totally incompatible cultures with the United States of America, with Western civilization, so that that new base will prop up the political class of the United States into the future. This is the neo-serfdom, the neo-fiefdom that Alex Jones has been talking about, where there'll be these white liberals like the Elizabeth Warrens and the Chuck Schumers at the top. And there'll be this base of brown people and Muslims that fund it. And it's exactly what happened in Europe as well, because Europe has a similar problem with its crisis. Because inflation is so bad that nobody in these countries is having children, certainly not to the extent that they were 100 years ago. This feminist push has everybody on birth control. Nobody's getting married till they're in their 30s. And by the time they get married, their fertility rates are super low, so they're having fewer children. And so what the European leadership decided to do was just, why don't we import millions upon millions of people that hate Western civilization so that we can have a slave class under us? So I, Keir Starmer, can be white and pleased with my whiteness, and I can pretend to sell out to this class of people that I'm bringing into my country. But really what I'm doing is ensuring that there's a financial base that pays up into the political class system while I allow the erosion and eradication and, frankly, genocide of my entire peoples. That's the philosophy of the left. The Russians are dealing with this problem, but they're not importing millions upon millions of people into the country. They're trying to expand their way out of it. China's got this problem, and they don't really care about massive death. I mean, just look what happened between 1958 and 1962 with the Great Leap Forward. At least 50 million Chinese starved to death. Mao Zedong didn't give a shit. But what they want to do is try to get artificial intelligence and robotics ramped up as much as possible, so when the people age out in the next 10 years, they can replace them with artificial intelligence. But they're not going to be able to do it fast enough because we have a monopoly on most of the technology required to do that, otherwise known as Taiwan, which is why Taiwan now is under more threat than it's ever been before, because China is desperate and they need that technology to replace their labor force, which is why Israel is under threat right now through Iran, because China is funding Iran to disrupt trade through Israel, and it's trying to disrupt trade through India as well, because they understand that the United States is trying to set up India to replace China as its manufacturing hub. And if you don't believe me, I mean, we've got article after article after article that explains it. Trump's tariff gambit, how it's reshaping India, China, and the global economy. India is the new China. New Zealand needs to see the bigger picture in trade negotiations. And I've got countless other articles and examples of this in the stack. It's very obvious what's happening here, but this level of desperation from a nuclear power is very alarming to me. Because what will they do next? If they have no choice, if they're economically squeezed out and they're starving and they're desperate, that's what I'm worried about. We're going to get into more news, more reports from Alex Jones on the other side of this short break. Before we go to break, I'm going to remind you again about methylene blue. I'm actually excited for the break coming up in 53 seconds. Despite the fact that I love being on the air, I'm excited for the break because I'm going to shake the hell out of this bottle and I'm going to put a dropper in some soda water and I'm going to be lit up like a Christmas tree for the rest of the show. This is the most amazing substance that I've ever seen in my entire life. It's almost too good to be true. I feel like I'm plugged into the wall, and I believe you will too. Please go to the AlexJonesStore.com right now. Subscribe for 50% off. You can cancel anytime, or you can buy one bottle if you want. It's just more expensive that way. But if you subscribe, you ensure that you always have a bottle every single month. Even when it goes out of stock for other buyers, we reserve them and hold them back for our subscribers. So please go to the AlexJonesStore.com right now, not just because methylene blue makes you sharper, more energetic, more focused, stronger even. I mean, it's literally just like, it's like human fuel. But because you're keeping InfoWars on the air. So go to the AlexJonesStore.com right now and be the reason Alex Jones will always be on the air.
I've known about methylene blue for decades. But because the public hadn't caught up with it yet, I've had guests on, I've talked about it, but I never sold it. And finally, in the last few years, the public's woken up so much, there was enough interest in it, enough of a market that major pharmaceutical producers in the United States started making USP, or United States Pharmacopoeia grade, or pharmaceutical grade. And I was already looking into selling methylene blue when I saw RFK Jr., right after he was confirmed as HHS head of Health and Human Services, on Air Force One taking it, and I said, now's the time. So our great sponsor, the amazing patriots at Bigley that run and own the AlexJonesStore.com, got a huge contract with the top pharmaceutical producer of it. So all methylene blue works, even the crap that is literally clothing dye from China. That's just one of the uses it has. That's not what it is. And the FDA is cracking down on that, and they should. No, this is pharmaceutical grade. It is the very best. It is simply amazing. Because I've got from a medical doctor this USP grade, and it worked good and gave me great energy with no letdown. But when I today took this, it was 10 times stronger in my personal experience of it. So it funds the InfoWar. It's the highest quality. It's the lowest price. Believe me, you want to get it, but take a very low dose when you first get it, a third of a drop or whatever, because it depends on your physiology, how it's going to affect you. It is ultra methylene blue at thealexjonestore.com. It's incredible.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show, ladies and gentlemen. I am Chase Geiser, your host for the next couple of hours. Alex Jones will be back in studio on Thursday, and we do have more reports from him coming during this broadcast, fresh reports from the road. He is visiting Tucker Carlson, and we expect that episode to be coming out in the coming days. In the meantime, Caroline Leavitt has been doing a press conference, and she did begin to take questions from the press. So we're going to show you a couple of clips of that. The first one up is about tariffs. We're going to show you that clip and then unpack it, and then we're going to show you another clip about iPhones based on some of the questions she was asked in her response, and unpack that as well. So let's do the first clip.
Total since the Liberation Day announcement, nearly 70 countries have already reached out to the president to begin a negotiation. Countries are falling over themselves to reform their unfair trade practices and free open their markets to our country. Why? Because these countries greatly respect President Trump and the sheer power of the American market. These countries realize they've gotten filthy rich over the past few decades by imposing substantial tariffs on American-made products and ridiculous non-monetary barriers to block out American industry. The jig is up. Past American presidents sat by and let this happen, but President Trump stood up for our country, and he is saying no more. critical.
But iPhones specifically, is that something that he thinks is the kind of technology that can move to the U.S.?
Absolutely. He believes we have the labor, we have the workforce, we have the resources to do it. And as you know, Apple has invested $500 billion here in the United States. So if Apple didn't think the United States could do it, they probably wouldn't have put up that big chunk of change.
And she's right, but it's not just the United States that can perform manufacturing for Apple. We got this overhead article here from India Today. Trump tariff effect. Apple, Samsung said to ramp up Indian manufacturing. Apple and Samsung are reportedly considering shifting a larger part of their global production to India as a direct response to the higher import tariffs announced by former President by existing U.S. President Donald Trump. Apple, Samsung are said to ramp up production in India amid the rising U.S. tariffs. India is likely to gain an edge as China and Vietnam are facing higher import duties. Both Apple and Samsung are yet to comment on the matter. They're considering shifting a larger part of their global production to India as direct response to the higher import tariffs announced by its existing U.S. President Donald Trump, with the U.S. now slapping a steep 54% duty on Chinese products. So just like we've been talking about, we are diversifying into India. There's a major demographic crisis happening in China and Russia and in the United States for that matter. And so what Trump is doing is not just imposing a tariff on these other countries in order to incentivize to catalyze a more rapid diversification of where we source our materials. Remember how bad it was during COVID when virtually everything you could imagine was manufactured in China and we couldn't get any of it because all the ships were stuck in the port at like Newport, California, I think. We realized how dependent we were on them for things like insulin and basically everything else. And so we've got to diversify because when China's labor force goes away, they are not going to be able to meet the demand. But we've got a similar problem here in the United States of America. Our demographic is shrinking. And the Democrats' solution was just to import as many people as possible into the United States to replace that. But what Trump is doing is playing 4D chess. He actually is playing 4D chess this time. This is not some QAnon conspiracy. This is not some wishful thinking. It's not an example of me seeing him do something that I can't explain that makes me uncomfortable, so I write it off as 4D chess just so that I can have the inverse of Trump derangement syndrome, which is to say that he could do nothing wrong. No, he's actually playing 4D chess because he understands fundamentally that the reason we have a population crisis here in the United States of America is because inflation has been out of control since 1971 when we went off the gold standard. When inflation goes up, native populations have smaller and smaller families. And men and women both have to work. And when they both work, they get married later. And they have children later, which means they have fewer children. My parents were born in 1949. They started having kids when they were 23 years old. I didn't start having kids until I was 30. Would have loved to have kids in my early 20s. Would have loved to have started a family. Didn't meet somebody. Everybody's focused on their career, trying to get everything right, trying to save up for a down payment on a house. It takes a long time to do that. It takes forever to get out of your parents' basement. If you're a college graduate with a ton of debt and you majored in some stupid degree that you've been brainwashed into pursuing and you've been indoctrinated so you're worthless in the market. But Trump understands that inflation is the primary cause, not just of our population crisis here in the United States, but of almost every other problem you can possibly imagine, whether it's the feminist movement, whether it's this woke ideology, whether it's the debt crisis that everyone's facing, including our government, but everyone on an individual level with bankruptcies up 21% year over year under the Biden administration. Credit card debt, I think 54% of the population has credit card debt now. And the Democrats like to come out and act like whenever the stock market crashes 3% in one day or 1,500 points in one day, that it's some major blow to middle class or lower class Americans when it's the Democratic policies that have resulted in an entire class of people, middle and below, who have been incapable of affording investing in the market to begin with for many, many years. I mean, there was a time in this country where blue-collar workers put a little bit of money aside for like 30, 40, 50 years, and by the time they retired, maybe they had $1 or $2 million, and that was enough to live on. Gone are those days. Everybody's paycheck to paycheck. And what happens when you have both parents working is you have to outsource the raising of your children to the state, so as soon as they turn 5 years old, you send them to public school because that's the only one you can afford. And then the state takes over from the age of 5 until 23 when they graduate from college, 18 at least when they graduate from high school. So the state's raising and indoctrinating their children Both parents are working. As a result of the financial stresses, they're getting divorced. And then you have single parent homes. And then you have step parents coming in. And the greatest likelihood of a child being abused is having a step parent. Did you know that statistically? That's the greatest indicator that there's a child being abused, or the greatest threat to a child is a step parent. Then the abuse breeds all these problems: mental illness, depression, suicide, use of fentanyl, gender dysphoria, child abuse, more pedophilia. And it goes on and on and on. All the crime that's happening in the minority communities since the 70s is as a result of this inflation, because the minority communities were impacted first and turned to crime, and the parents aren't around to watch the kids, and the kids get in trouble, and then all of a sudden it's single mothers raising all these kids. Every single problem that we face in the United States of America is because our money is a lie. And how do you stop inflation? Well, the only way you can really stop inflation is by cutting the spending, which is the purpose of Doge. And the only way you can catalyze production domestically or in other places other than China is by imposing tariffs on our adversary nations that we become reliant on. I mean, we have funded the development of China's entire economy. They've got supposedly 600 nuclear weapons. They're not even accurately reporting how much gold they're mining in their own country because they're trying to frantically figure out a way to create a new currency to subvert the dollar. And we've been paying for all of this. And what does China go and do? Well, they go and they buy all their oil from Iran, a lot of it. And they fund Iran, which in turn funds terrorism in the Middle East, which in turn is used by our CIA to justify war after war after war in the region. Whether it's Afghanistan, which was to ensure that oil was traded in dollars. Whether it's Iraq, which was to ensure that oil is traded in dollars. Whether it was Gaddafi in Libya, who was assassinated to ensure that oil was traded in dollars. Whether it's Iran, to ensure that, yes, oil is traded in dollars, but to also ensure that China is unable to get a trade monopoly in the region through the Belt and Road Initiative. This whole conflict with Iran is a proxy conflict with China, and China is ramping up because they've reached such a degree of desperation. And the only way we're ever going to get ourselves out of being in war after war after war is if we have honest money, which is why I'm interested when I hear things like Donald Trump saying that we're going to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve as a nation. Which is why I'm interested when I hear Donald Trump say things like, we're going to check out Fort Knox to see if there's actually any gold there. Why is he interested in gold all of a sudden? Why is he interested in Bitcoin reserves while simultaneously signing executive orders banning central bank digital currencies? Because maybe he knows that the globalists are up to something subversive where they themselves are trying to replace the dollar as the global reserve currency. They're trying to catalyze the collapse, folks. And the fact of the matter is, this whole globalist push, whether it was from the UN or from NATO or from the World Economic Forum and these other cucks, this whole globalist push for green energy was actually always about destroying the dollar, because the international community, these globalists, understand that the dollar is dependent on oil being traded in dollars. And if we establish green energy, then the globalists will successfully be able to eradicate all of the people in third world countries through exposure, starvation, these countries that depend directly on fossil fuels. They'll simultaneously be able to erode and eradicate this class of people in the world that would be a burden on their one world government, while causing the dollar to crash so the IMF or other international banking entities can usher in a new central bank digital currency and control every transaction the world over. You have to keep in mind that China and Russia are not on the side of the globalists, and the globalists certainly are not on the side of the United States of America. But they're all vying for economic dominance. You've got all of Europe totally sold out and eroded its own culture by importing this slave class into it, this tax base. Then they use all that funding to put these committees and groups together to just conspire to undermine the integrity of the United States economy. I mean, there's a reason that Mark Carney was made the Prime Minister of Canada with 86% support by 150,000 leftists, with his background in the International Bank of Settlements, the Bank of Canada, the Bank of England, his statements and his advocacy for central bank digital currencies and just more and more control. I mean, if 86% of the trashiest leftist globalist entities in Canada are supporting Mark Carney, what kind of guy do you think Mark Carney is? All in the context of some major trade war that we're having right now. They are implanting their agents all over and all around the United States of America, even inside the United States of America. I mean, why do you think that China, if it's suffering such a major population crisis, made the decision to send 30,000 military-aged men to the United States during the pandemic? You realize that 30,000 military-aged men cannot get out of China without permission. What's more, without sponsorship. So they're sending sleeper cells into the United States for God knows what reason, all while they're having a population crisis, all while they're trying to manifest a trade monopoly in the hemisphere, all while they're trying to antagonize any other alternative trade development, all while they desperately need the NVIDIA superconductor capacity in Taiwan. This is why you have Hegseth coming out and saying Indo-Pacific region over and over again. It's why you have Schumer saying Indo-Pacific region over and over again. It's why you have Mike Johnson saying Indo-Pacific region over and over again, because the entire military-industrial complex is gearing up for a war with China, either explicitly or through proxy in Iran. But no, the Democrats just don't understand these tariffs. These tariffs are bad for middle-class people. This is clip number 25, a clip about tariffs costing Americans. Let's watch 25.
I hope he comes to his senses and listens to some cooler voices around him, but there's no sign of that at all. And the chaotic nature of this, as Kramer has pointed out with this map, the fact that they didn't even notice they were taxing with their tariffs a bunch of penguins on 2 remote islands. It's unbelievable to me. And then at the same time, you've got regular Americans who are just holding on to things while they're dismantling Social Security, while they're cutting Medicaid. We've got a vote on the Senate floor, and so many of our Republican colleagues, again, a lot of angst because they've realized that this is an economic disaster. And we want to get on track, but he's got to come to his senses, and he's got to stop worrying about Elon Musk and the trillionaires around him and start thinking about those
Elon Musk and the trillionaires around him.
Get by.
Does Amy Klobuchar not understand that Social Security and Medicaid are the reason people need Social Security and Medicaid? That these welfare programs and the printing of money that we have to do in order to fund them is the result in the middle class and lower classes' total loss of buying power over the course of the last 50 years, resulting in their utter dependence on the U.S. government, all while that government sponsors the replacement migration of their people? Here's another one, clip number 36, and then we'll unpack who's really got billionaires surrounding them. Clip 36.
Off, Lawrence. First they were shocked, and now they're mad. And so that is a major factor that's going to go on all around the world. People are going to make decisions. We've got farmers that need Canadian potash for fertilizer. We have got others that sell their soybeans all over the world. And what happens is these other countries say, wait a minute, I can get stuff from Brazil. I can get stuff from another country. And then we lose those contracts forever. We're the 4th biggest ag exporting state in the nation. So I see it firsthand. And these rural areas especially are going to be hit by this hard. So, you know, we were joined today by the steelworkers are on our side on this, a number of other unions. We have got the Retail Association with us on this. And wait a minute, the Chamber of Commerce endorsed this resolution today. So you're right, this is the first major crack. And I'm so glad you understand the significance of this for the American people in terms of prices going up even more than they've already gone up, but also the political significance that we stood up and we won.
Don't even get me started on the Chamber of Commerce. But Amy goes up there and she criticizes all the billionaires surrounding Elon Musk when he is like the minority among minorities of billionaires. And they talk about how these tariffs are a major problem for working class people when the only people who lost money in the last few days were the billionaires and the multimillionaires who were invested in the market. And it's all recovered anyway. Nobody else can afford to put money in the market, Amy, because your policies have screwed everybody out of buying power. Everybody's living paycheck to paycheck. Eggs are way overpriced. They're getting better, but they're way overpriced because there was a 400% mysterious increase in poultry farms going up in flames between 2020 and 2024 compared to 2016 to 2020, the 4 years prior. Why is it that the government is burning up all of our livestock and agriculture and selling all of our farmland to China? Why is it that they're culling all these herds of poultry and California is declaring a state of emergency because one guy gets the flu in Louisiana, creating an artificial shortage so they can justify pushing mRNA vaccines on poultry because they know no one else will voluntarily take any of these vaccines after what happened during COVID-19. But let's look at your background, Amy. For her current Senate campaign, data from Open Secrets as of October 26, 2024, happy birthday Hillary Clinton, highlights the top contributors based on aggregated donations from employees, their families, and PACs affiliated with specific organizations. Dorsey and Whitney, okay, that's a law firm. University of Minnesota, okay, makes sense. That's where she's from. Fager Drinker, another prominent law firm. Emily's List, a PAC focused on electing pro-choice Democratic women, okay. Medtronic, a major Minnesota-based medical device company. That's probably got some China money behind it. How about billionaire donors? Klobuchar had 21 billionaires and their spouses as donors, more than most Democratic candidates except Pete Buttigieg, Joe Biden, Cory Booker, and Kamala Harris. Notable names include Jonathan Gray, Blackstone COO, Hamilton Tony James, Blackstone EVP, both tied to finance. No wonder she's so upset that the stock market went down. All of her donors are like, hey, Trump's tariffs are really screwing up our political class skimming. Reid Hoffman, LinkedIn co-founder, a tech billionaire and major Democratic donor. S. Daniel Abraham, Slim Fast founder, frequent contributor to Democratic causes. We need fat people if we're going to sell Slim Fast. Stanley Hubbard, Hubbard Broadcasting, a Minnesota media mogul who typically leans Republican but supported Klobuchar for some reason. United Health Group, Wells Fargo, Comcast. I mean, she is the epitome of swampy, swamp. So no wonder she's opposed to these tariffs, because all of her donors are in banking or finance or dependent on Chinese imports, whether than the medical manufacturing field. And she goes up there and she has the audacity to act like she is operating on behalf of the interests of the American people when virtually everything she has ever said or done has accomplished nothing for them and served only to exploit them. She would rather have us completely dependent on China, funding the desperate military development in China, so that all of our economy and manufacturing would totally collapse within the next 10 years when their demographic implodes, than just stomach a weekend of bad performance in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. I mean, I don't even know what to say. And it's not just her, it's these others coming out, like the Elizabeth Warrens. I thought Elizabeth Warren was supposed to be some genius. I thought she was supposed to be some really talented, brilliant Harvard professor, but she is shockingly retarded. I mean, look, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but it's a deeply uncomfortable feeling to think I'd be better at being a senator than the current senators. I mean, no average American should feel like they would be better at the job than the people doing a job so important. But we've arrived at a place where basically anyone else would be better at this job. You mean you want to fund China and you want to allow them to build the Belt and Road Initiative and subvert the US dollar and to have a monopoly on trade in the region? You mean you want to fund China so that they can take Taiwan back and then have a monopoly on artificial intelligence in the age of artificial intelligence as the super weapon that it is? Because you're upset that your Wells Fargo donors aren't going to support you the next go-around? You're upset that Comcast isn't going to support you the next round. And you're going to act like the reason you're saying what you're saying and doing what you're doing is because you love middle-class Americans when you had almost more billionaire donors support your campaign than any other Democrat. I think it's very clear which party, which philosophy, which ideology is the billionaire elite philosophy, exceptions included, like Elon Musk. I think it's very clear that the Democrats are abundantly on the side of the billionaires. And they always talk about paying your fair share. We have to tax people so they pay their fair share, when all the studies have been done, all of the numbers have been crunched. We know that if we liquidated all of the assets of all the 1,000 billionaires that are on the United States, something like that, it would pay for the government for like 6 months max. While they constantly rob Social Security, which is supposed to be eviscerated by 2035, and then they complain about Elon Musk identifying all the Social Security fraud when that actually ensures that Social Security will still exist longer into the future for people who really need it. I mean, the level of corruption and depravity here is like something not seen since Sodom and Gomorrah. And we've literally got clips similar to Sodom and Gomorrah of staffers in the halls of Senate rooms getting slammed. I'm just so sorry. That's just so embarrassing. I think the people are waking up. I guess the problem is that everybody's got an intuitive position on whether they're left-leaning or right-leaning, and then everything else is just confirmation bias. And so since Republicans are just as screwed up for different reasons, so many people support the Democrats because intuitively they might be left-leaning, and they see Lindsey Graham advocate for another war, or Tom Cotton advocate for another whatever, or Dan Crenshaw berate some 12-year-old or trip some journalist, and they just use that as confirmation bias in order to go further left. When it's actually one uniparty, there's no such thing as bipartisan. There's no such thing as reaching across the aisle. There's only a uniparty. I mean, America doesn't need a third political party. It needs a second one. That's what MAGA is. It's the second political party against the political class, the uniparty that exists. They're globalist left, globalist right. They scratch each other's backs. They shake hands. They drink together. They party together. They love each other behind the scenes, and then they play like they're fighting each other like it's WWE or WWF on C-SPAN. And right after they're just joking around. I mean, have you seen the clips, the footage, the images of AOC with Matt Gaetz? And I'm not bashing Matt Gaetz here, but Matt Gaetz when he was still in Congress. Have you seen her like kind of straddling his legs while he's sitting down looking up at her, and they're all buddy-buddy, and she's all close and feely touchy? Guys, see if you can find that image of AOC and Matt Gaetz. A lot of chemistry going on there for people with totally opposing political views in an incredibly contentious political time period. I'm just sick of it, folks. We're going to get into more news on the other side. We've got 2 more hours left of the Alex Jones Show coming up. More reports from Alex Jones coming up as well. Some in this hour, some in the final hour of the broadcast as well. In the meantime, Ultra Methylene Blue. Go to thealexjonestore.com and get Ultra Methylene Blue, not just because it's amazing for your mind, not just because it's amazing for your focus, not just because it empowers the mitochondria in your cells to give you as much energy as possible, not just because it helps your body absorb oxygen at an incredible rate, but because by getting this substance, Ultra Methylene Blue, not only are you able to accomplish self-actualization in a much more efficient way, but you are supporting the info war. You are supporting the truth amidst lies. You are awakening the global population to the threat that is globalism. And that's why we're under total attack. Alex Jones is under attack. His family's under attack. This crew is under attack. I'm under attack. InfoWars as a whole is under constant attack. We never know whether this week will be the last, and that's why we need your support more now than ever. Go to thealexjonestore.com right now. Subscribe for 50% off to Ultra Methylene Blue. Get your bottle every month, no matter what. And be the reason Alex Jones will always be on the air.
We wrote the book together on the modern information war and how to take down the tyrannical globalist. We're seeing the biggest victories in our history. And just like I was funding our operation 25, 26, 27 years ago, selling Patriot t-shirts to get the word out so we could identify each other and realize our strengths, we have come from when I would see maybe one Patriot t-shirt in an airport once a year, though I flew dozens of times a year, to every time I go to the airport, they are the most popular genre you see, not sports anymore. Because liberty and freedom is so incredibly popular. It is an adventure to wear the 1776 Americana shirts, the Trump shirts, the InfoWars shirts, the comedy shirts, the largest selection anywhere at thealexjonestore.com. I mean, it is insane. New ones every day, all made in Arkansas and shipped out to you around the country from our sponsor, Bigley, that owns thealexjonestore.com. It's an adventure to wear them. Join or die. Modern gas and flag design in olive green or in black. It just came everywhere. So what the
globalists have works. Not talking.
Gentlemen, get yours now. You know where, thealexjonestore.com. Now, this seems like a lot of cool designs to you. Believe me, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds on the site. It's crazy. Ball caps, you name it. And I said there's like 4 different genres. Classic, Patriot, Trump, InfoWars, Alex Jones, comedy. There's also what the guys at Bigley come up with, I call the triggering line. There's more than 50 of them. Look at this. U.S. Border Patrol, send them back. There's a lot of really wild stuff, but you wear this in San Francisco, you're probably gonna get killed. Wear it somewhere else, you're gonna probably get your dinner bought for you. All these and more are available right now. It's how we stay on the air. It's an information war. It's about who wants it most. We've won major battles, but not the war. Thanks for keeping us on air. Buy collectible, badass knives, the best supplements, and more. The biggest selection of Patriot apparel at thealexjonesstore.com, and I thank you for keeping us in the fight, because we're fighting for you. I'm fighting for myself. We're in this fight together, and we can't do it without you. So thank you so much for your past support.
A different feel on this one. I feel like, you know what we're not talking about? What we're not talking about is this is the Great Reset. Except it's not the Great Reset. It's the Great Reset of the Great Reset. The Great Reset, we had two ways to go. And Donald Trump never said it this way, but I thought I had articulated this, and maybe I hadn't clearly enough, and I've been trying to say it for the last few days, so let me just be very, very clear. You had two choices. The world as we know it doesn't work. So the first choice was what Klaus Schwab was doing, where we could all eat, bugs, and they were going to reset everything, get away from the free market entirely, go all globalism, and push everything up to a global government. That would reset. Yeah, that would reset our economies. It would reset our dollar. We would go to a global currency. All of the stuff we've talked about for the last 5 years, that's real. That was happening. Donald Trump came along and said, don't like that. Don't want to do that.
That's
okay?
good.
That's really
That's a good observation. We shouldn't do that.
The problem is you can't just not do that, because the problems are real. The solutions, the way the world works now, no longer works. It doesn't work the way it did in 1946. It's not 1946 again. So we need to update the system and repair all of the damage that has been done for the Great Reset. Because remember, what was their plan? To manage the decline of the West, just to keep it going enough so nobody really, and then it'll come in one violent shock, and everybody will be like, oh my gosh, panic. And that's when they will finally change everything and make the final switch. That's the Great Reset. So Donald Trump, we elected him because we didn't want that, right? If you thought you were going to get a replay of 2016, you're mistaken, because this time he gets it. Remember we said, the 2020 election was really good, it turns out, because he had time to think and realize what he was fighting and where everybody is and make a plan. This is part of his plan. And he told us, now he didn't say about the Great Reset part, but he told us that we're going in a completely different direction. He told Europe that. He's told everybody that. That's what NATO is about. That's what all of this stuff is about. He's resetting the system. So it will be an America first, and anybody else that wants to join us, England first, whatever, we'll all get around, we'll all get along, we'll trade, but we're not going to do it the way the globalists have done it. So what we're going through now is the shock to the system of the beginning of the shaking off the calcification of this system and restarting the engine and saying we're going in a different direction. Throw this thing in reverse. And so all of the gears and everything that has been turning one direction now for almost 100 years, and especially in the last 25 to 30 years with the Great Reset and the WEF and everything else, all those mechanisms, all those gears that have been going one way only, all of a sudden are grinding to a halt and reversing. That's what you're going to feel. Now, I didn't expect this to happen now. I mean, I was expecting that I would see progress on the border. I was hoping that I would see tax cuts by now. I was hoping I would see more regulation cuts by now, because those two things are vital before you put in the tariffs, or at least right after you put in the tariffs. It helps ease this pain. That's Congress, haven't done their job. I don't know why he's not pounding his fist on their heads right now to get that job done. But that's what's happening. And this is why Donald Trump said over the weekend, what was it? I want to give his quote. He told the average Americans, hang tough. Just hang tough with me. I know it is bad right now, but This is an economic revolution, and we will win. Hang tough. It won't be easy, but the end result will be historic. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm not hoping that his tariffs work. I'm hoping for an economic revolution.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Chase Geiser, and in just about 3 minutes, I am going to show you the latest Alex Jones report. The crew has just received it from Alex Jones, so you will be getting an update from him momentarily on some recent controversy surrounding RFK Jr. Now, if you've been paying attention for the last couple of weeks, you may have noticed that there has been some quote-unquote scandal associated with RFK Jr. I don't know how true it is, what's really going on. I don't know the details. I've never met Candace Owens, but I trust her reporting. She's a very impressive woman. I know Ian Carroll very well. He's reported on this some too. I don't know if I agree with him, but I definitely trust him. Incredibly brilliant and honest person. But the controversy around RFK Jr. over the past couple of weeks has been whether or not he's compromised in some way or another. And I'm not going to go into the details because, frankly, I don't know the details. But this recent development from the other day is very interesting because, as you know, RFK Jr. has been very opposed to the vaccine industry for very many years. And there's a post from Secretary Kennedy's X account from, I believe, just 2 days ago. Overhead cam, please. Said, I came to Gaines County, Texas today to comfort the Hildebrand family after the loss of their 8-year-old daughter, Daisy. Got to know the family of 6-year-old Kaylee Fair after she passed away in February. I also developed bonds with and deep affection for other members of this community during this difficult time. Of course, he's referring to the measles outbreak. And it goes on, the bottom, RFK Jr. says the most effective way to prevent the spread of measles is the MMR vaccine. And so a lot of people are like, wait, what the hell, RFK? I thought you were opposed to these vaccines. So I'm going to show you this clip, 49, of Ian Carroll breaking this down a little bit. And then I'm going to show you Alex's in-depth analysis, which I'm very much looking forward to seeing. This is clip 49.
So, quote, the most effective way to prevent the spread of measles is the MMR vaccine. On to the text message that I got yesterday. They're perplexed because what RFK said in person is the opposite of what he said in this post. This book was published by Children's Health Defense, and it's called The Measles Book. And then a foreword by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Why have the benefits of the measles vaccine been exaggerated and the risks understated? Because these vaccines are a cash cow. Quote, measles outbreaks have been fabricated to create fear that in turn forces government officials to do something. Obviously, that is misinformation and, bad science. And anyone that would question the efficacy and the safe and effectiveness of the V things clearly is a misinformation spreader. So just to clarify, our stance on this show is that those V things are extremely safe and effective, and you should listen to everything that the big pharma media tells you about them, which I'm sure there was no crimes because these guys are all above board, and big pharma would never, ever commit a crime for profit. That's why they voted for Bobby. And so now that Bobby is changing his tune, it's looking pretty fishy. And so we naturally have some questions for you, Bobby Kennedy, because we are here to Maha, and we're gonna Maha. And we are under the impression that you're here to Maha too, and this is your legacy. And you wrote the goddamn book on it. The Real Anthony Fauci. And right now, Bobby, you are writing the book, The Real Bobby Kennedy. Conspiracy theories are dangerous.
Information is the oxygen.
All right, so here is Alex Jones's report on this post from Secretary Kennedy, which seems to be in total conflict with his earlier. Know the details. But this recent development from the other day is very interesting because, as you know, RFK Jr. has been very opposed to the vaccine industry for very many years. And there's a post from Secretary Kennedy's X account from, I believe, just 2 days ago. Overhead cam, please. Said, I came to Gaines County, Texas today to comfort the Hildebrand family after the loss of their 8-year-old daughter, Daisy. Got to know the family of 6-year-old Kaylee Fair after she passed away in February. I also developed bonds with and deep affection for other members of this community during this difficult time. Of course, he's referring to the measles outbreak. And it goes on, the bottom, RFK Jr. says the most effective way to prevent the spread of measles is the MMR vaccine. And so a lot of people are like, wait, what the hell, RFK? I thought you were opposed to these vaccines. So I'm going to show you this clip, 49 of Ian Carroll breaking this down a little bit. And then I'm going to show you Alex's in-depth analysis, which I'm very much looking forward to seeing. This is clip 49.
So, quote, the most effective way to prevent the spread of measles is the MMR vaccine. On to the text message that I got yesterday. They're perplexed because what RFK said in person is the opposite of what he said in this post. This book was published by Children's Health Defense, and it's called The Measles Book. And then a foreword by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Why have the benefits of the measles vaccine been exaggerated and the risks understated? Because these vaccines are a cash cow. Quote, measles outbreaks have been fabricated to create fear that in turn forces government officials to do something. Obviously, that is misinformation and, bad science. And anyone that would question the efficacy and the safe and effectiveness of the V things clearly is a misinformation spreader. So just to clarify, our stance on this show is that those V things are extremely safe and effective. And you should listen to everything that the big pharma media tells you about them, which I'm sure there was no crimes because these guys are all above board. And big pharma would never, ever commit a crime for profit. That's why they voted for Bobby. And so now that Bobby is changing his tune, it's looking pretty fishy. And so we naturally have some questions for you, Bobby Kennedy, because we are here to Maha, and we're gonna Maha. And we are under the impression that you're here to Maha too. And this is your legacy. And you wrote the goddamn book on it. The Real Anthony Fauci. And right now, Bobby, you are writing the book, The Real Bobby Kennedy.
Conspiracy theories are dangerous. Information is the oxygen.
All right, so here is Alex Jones's report on this post from Secretary Kennedy, which seems to be in total conflict with his earlier positions and statements on the matter, and is confusing a lot of people. And I hope Kennedy comes out and says, oh, it was a staffer, it was a mistake. It's not exactly how I feel. And it's possible that maybe a bunch of staffers still run the Secretary of Health account. I don't know. But let's see what Alex Jones has to say right now.
Your kids were young now. Would you give them the measles, the mumps vaccine?
No. I got measles, mumps when I was a kid. It was...
Lots of people used to die from those diseases.
Well, you know what? They died in the 1900s or early 1900s. There were about 10,000 Americans a year died. In 1964, there was about 300 or 400 who died, and they were almost all severely malnourished kids, mainly from the Mississippi Delta.
Well, you just saw that clip from a few months ago of our now Health and Human Services head, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., saying he would not give the MMR shot to his family. And of course, we know the MMR is the #1 so-called vaccine, the triple jab for measles, mumps, rubella, linked directly to autism, and now thousands of studies. And in the last few months, with the so-called measles outbreak, there's only been 2 deaths. Both of them had comorbidities. They've died from other things. They put measles on the death certificate. Kennedy came out and said you need better nutrition and things like that. Most people don't even get sick from measles. Flu kills way more people, so what's all the hysteria about? That's absolutely accurate. But he said during confirmation hearings he's not against vaccines in general, and he said he would go with what the Trump administration told him to do if it was legal. So he's been put under pressure by the Trump administration to do something about measles and all this hysteria. Well, he was doing the right thing, exposing it as a bunch of fear-mongering. But now with his whole background, he learned in a lawsuit, researching it himself, that he got his larynx damaged from the flu shot. The flu shot's linked to causing worse COVID cases in people, lowering your immunity. He wrote the book on Anthony Fauci. So overall, he's doing a great job getting all the toxic chemicals out of the food. And they've already put that ban in place, so they're having to pull that out now. There's all these big legal cases. They killed the new COVID booster a few weeks ago. He's got big investigations going to the vaccine makers. I mean, they're scared. Bill Gates has come after him with big money. But that said, it's still disappointing. We need to put pressure on the Trump administration in general to let him do his job. And that's what we put him there for at HHS, was to make our country healthy again. Maha. So here's some excerpts over the years of Kennedy talking about these issues. And he's still a force for good. But, Trump went along with warp speed. It was his big failure. He's been told all the people boo it. He knows people are angry. I have another report coming out on that. Trump's been basically going after Fauci and others for the origin situation. And Fauci's now saying, oh, there's going to be a new, more deadly virus coming out that's going to derail Trump. And so this is really creepy. Trump needs to get ahead of it this time. They want to use it in a new pandemic to bring in all their controls. And Kennedy's the man to fight it. But this is still disheartening. I don't hate him. He's still doing a lot of great work. But you can't play politics with people's lives and with what has been happening to our children. It's just too important. But regardless of what Kennedy does, we're all going to continue here in the independent real media to expose the fact that these shots don't protect you. In fact, they hurt you. It's all part of Big Pharma and Big Medicine's plan to have a sick population they can suck off of and control. And ultimately, it's about depopulation. I know Trump, for a fact, has been told that because I've told him, many others have told him as well. Another report coming out on that in the next few hours. So please stay with us. Here's some excerpts of the things that Kennedy said in the past that are dead on. This is the Kennedy we love. The new one we're starting to see. We're concerned.
If your kids were young now, would you give them the measles, the mumps vaccine?
No. I got measles, mumps when I was a kid. It was
lots of people die from them. Used to die from those diseases.
Well, you know what? They died in the 1900s or early 1900s. There were about 10,000 Americans a year who died. In 1964, there was about 300 or 400 who died, and they were almost all severely malnourished kids, mainly from the Mississippi Delta. This was before the poverty program, so there was a lot of starving children in our country. It's very, very hard to kill a healthy child with any infectious disease, but particularly with measles. And the World Health Organization now says vitamin A is an absolute cure for measles, which we didn't know about back then. Back then, you know, we were treated with chicken soup, and it was, you know, a week at home watching Leave It to Beaver, and every kid caught it. Every single kid got it. And I had 11 brothers and sisters, and we all got it, and we were all fine. And there are lots and lots of studies out there now that show that kids who get measles as a child are much healthier when they grow up, that they're much more resistant to cancers, to atopic diseases, to allergies, and to heart disease. And that's the problem. If you do not do placebo-controlled studies, you will not see those effects. You'll just think, oh, I just cured measles, good for me. You're not seeing that 10 years later, those children are much more susceptible to Hodgkin's lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, atopic diseases, cardiac diseases, allergic diseases than other kids, and you may be killing more of them over the long run than measles ever did.
First, tell the audience why you sound hoarse.
I have a disease called spasmodic dystonia, and I got it when I had a very, very strong voice until I was 46 years old. And I got this. It's actually a neurological injury, and it causes my voice to sound kind of strangled. I actually it was much worse than this for a long period of time. I had surgery on it in Japan about a year ago, and that helped me a lot. And then I'm doing some treatments now that are helping me. But, my voice stinks. My voice got turned this way. I got a disease, a neurological injury in 1996 when I was 42 years old. And it's called spasmodic dystonia. And I never knew what happened. The doctors would ask me, did you have a trauma? And then about 3 years ago, I was litigating against the flu vaccine. I was preparing a complaint against all the companies that made flu vaccines, certain kind of flu vaccines. And I had to, for the first time, look at all the list of side effects that are on the manufacturer's inserts. And this disease, spasmodic dystonia, was one of the top injuries. In a million years, I would not take the flu shot. And I'll tell you why, because this is what Cochrane and BMJ have found. People who take the flu shot are protected against that strain of flu. They're 4.4 times more likely to get a non-flu infection. And you might find, and a lot of people do, that they get the flu shot and then they get sick. They're usually not getting the flu. They're getting something that is indistinguishable from the flu because the flu shot gives you something called pathogenic priming. It injures your immune system so that you're more likely to get a non-flu viral upper respiratory infection. In fact, the Pentagon published a story, and you can cite this, it's by Wolfe, W-O-L-F-E, in January of this year, in which they said that the flu shot not only primes you for flu, but it primes you for coronavirus.
You went to Samoa. You convinced people not to get the measles vaccine. An outbreak resulted in 83 deaths.
Yeah, well, that story is not true. First of all, the Prime Minister of Samoa stayed the measles vaccine after measles vaccines killed a number of people in Samoa, including members of his family. So when I went to Samoa, the ban was already in place. And I visited people in Samoa. I didn't know there was no policy that resulted from my going to Samoa. Secondly, nobody died in Samoa from measles. They were dying from a bad vaccine. And the vaccine was imported from Australia and given to people who had measles, which is not recommended. The same measles outbreak hit Tonga, which is the neighboring island, and nobody died because they didn't get the vaccine. So this is more propaganda by the pharmaceutical industry, which is, drumming up a lie to try to discredit me. But if you actually look into it, John, you'll find that it is not true.
And you still say that autism is caused by vaccines?
Yeah, autism is caused by vaccines. And by the way, CDC's own data, they did a study called the Verstraeten study in 1989. And they looked at the hepatitis B vaccine. They looked at children, and from the biggest database in the world, the Vaccine Safety Data Link, they looked at children who got the hepatitis B vaccine during their first 30 days, and they compared those to kids who got it later or didn't get it at all. And there was a 1,350% elevated risk for autism among the people who got the vaccine.
There may well be, but there are studies with millions of people. You ignore the big studies.
You have this wrong. There's a series of about 13 studies that were done by people we call biostitutes. One of them was the leading one, who are people who do these studies for money for CDC. They were paid for by CDC in order to create the illusion that vaccines don't cause autism. The chief scientist was a guy called Paul Thornton, who CDC laid, and his study is the most cited study for this proposition. And Paul Thornton is now a fugitive. He's wanted by Interpol. He stole millions of dollars from CDC that he had claimed to use on this study, but he was building houses, buying motorcycles, and living a life of luxury. And his study is absolute fraud. And yet they have not retracted it because CDC is a dishonest organization. It continues to be cited in the literature. And by the way, John, there are hundreds and hundreds of studies. I've written a book, if you're interested, called Thimerosal, Let the Science Speak, that has, I think, 1,400 references and over 400 studies cited that link autism and other related neurological injuries to vaccines. There is no question about it. If you actually read the literature, if you listen to what the propaganda that CDC tells you, yeah, vaccines don't cause autism. But it's propaganda. This is a captive agency that is intertwined and owned by the pharmaceutical industry.
And in closing on the RFK Jr. situation, one of the good things he's been promoting is methylene blue that cleans out your mitochondria and gives most people incredible energy. We've got the very best, strongest pharmaceutical-grade methylene blue right now under the name Ultra Methylene Blue at thealexjonesstore.com. It is in stock, but it's selling out quickly. Get yours. It's amazing, and it funds the info war. You'll find Ultra Methylene Blue and other incredible supplements like Irish sea moss, the very best shilajit, the very best concentrated turmeric, and more at thealexjonesstore.com. Be sure and get yours.
This is incredibly unnerving. let's just take a 30,000-foot view on this. RFK Jr. has, for the entirety of his career, taken an incredibly unpopular position on vaccines. I mean, back when everybody thought you were crazy to be a vaccine denier 10, 20, 30 years ago. I know many of these listeners here to InfoWars always knew something was wrong, but I'm talking in terms of the people. So he goes his whole entire career, his whole entire life, dealing with the fact that his father was killed, that JFK was killed, likely by the intelligence community, admits that he doesn't believe Sirhan Sirhan was involved, directly at least. Constantly going to war with major pharmaceutical companies, doing major environmental work, major environmental lawsuits, touting incredibly unpopular, accurate positions on the safety and efficacy of vaccines, whether or not they're linked to autism. Struggles with substance abuse, overcomes it. It's very public. He goes through a nasty divorce. Sexual addiction becomes very public, embarrassing years ago. Everybody's got a thorn in their side. I'm not throwing stones. And then all of a sudden, after he gets a major position, to see him to begin to flip on the vaccine issue is really alarming to me. And I hope this is a misunderstanding. I would like some transparency around this because I don't want to make any allegations or assumptions or accusations before I know what the hell I'm talking about. But if I had to guess, it seems like he's compromised. And no, I don't think it's Israel. I think it's the CIA. I don't know if it's linked to the fact that his daughter-in-law, who was also his campaign manager for some time, who now sits on an intelligence advisory board for Donald Trump, is former CIA. I believe she was the youngest woman ever recruited to the CIA at the age of 22. Maybe it's not related to that at all, but it seems very bizarre to me that after the CIA killed 2 members of your family and engaged in all this humanitarian stuff that you seem like you would fight against your whole life based on the other things he's fought against, you would allow the CIA to marry into your family or run your campaign. And maybe I'm just totally wrong. I don't know. I don't know Amaryllis Fox very well. Never met her. But for him to say that the measles vaccine, after all those clips that we just saw, is the safest and best way to prevent measles, that's the kind of stuff that people say when they're like they totally flip the script when they're compromised. I mean, it's like Otto Warmbier in North Korea when he was arrested for taking that portrait off the wall in the hotel, and he had to do this desperate confession on camera that was released to the world to embarrass him and humiliate him and show the dominance of the North Korean Communist Party. It sounds like he's compromised. And I know there were allegations of inappropriate texting relationships with journalists or whatever last year, and who cares? But this type of behavior, I think somebody's, if I had to guess, I don't know. Maybe I should. I bet there's some evidence floating around there that he doesn't want out. That's what it seems like to me. And the reason I think it's the CIA is because the CIA is in bed with the pharmaceutical industry for reasons of national security. The CIA understands that a major component of warfare in the 21st century is biological warfare. It's why they tried to get Mike Johnson to pass the $1.2 trillion omnibus bill that was going to fund no less than 12 biolabs all over the world. It's why Hunter Biden, through Rosemont Seneca, invested in Metabiota, which received a DoD contract for like $24 million while Joe Biden was vice president of the United States. And under that DoD contract, they did research in Ukraine and in Wuhan. Of course, Wuhan's the lab where COVID was made. And so if you have a national security apparatus that's very paranoid about biological warfare in the event of a conflict with China, which, as I explained over the first 2 hours of the show, is increasingly likely as China becomes more and more desperate with its demographic implosion it's experiencing right now, it seems to me reasonable that the CIA would be really pushing hard for pharmaceutical companies to have liability immunity for vaccines, like they pushed hard for years and years ago. It seems very likely that they'd be pushing hard for mRNA vaccines to be experimented with, tested, and cast all over civilization. So that in the event of a biological war with China, the CIA would have the means to vaccinate the populace. And what we saw from them with the bird flu was a concerted effort to justify vaccinating all of the food that we consume with mRNA technology that could, in time, be adapted to be transmissible via the food that we eat. And I think the CIA has got him blackmailed to push vaccines as a national security imperative. I don't know. I hope that everything's okay. I support Bobby. Maybe it's a cry for help. He should know that Maha will embrace him no matter what, and he should stop living under the thumb of whoever seems to be controlling him. All right, folks, we're going to break. We're going to be back in 4 minutes. Make sure you go to thealexjonesstore.com right now. Check out Ultra Methylene Blue, our best product for the best price with the best taste, and it keeps Alex Jones and InfoWars on the air. Go to thealexjonesstore.com right now and be the reason we will always be on the air.
You're seeing on screen footage of RFK Jr. on Air Force One right after he was confirmed as the head of Health and Human Services a little over a month ago, taking 3 dropperfuls of methylene blue. Now, I've been taking methylene blue here and there over the years, and it makes you feel electrical after you take it. It gives you clean energy beyond coffee with no letdown. There are a lot of incredible compounds out there, but it is the most amazing when it comes to nootropic. So after RFK Jr. publicly took it and it got this massive attention, we had all these listeners say, why aren't you carrying it? Well, I looked into it more than a decade ago and even a few years ago, and it's really hard to get it when it is what they call USP, or United States Pharmacopoeia grade, pharmaceutical grade. It wasn't scaled up yet to be able to get real USP tested grade. It was sold in medical clinics, you name it. Even though it's not prescription, to get the really good stuff, that's where you had to get it. But since RFK Jr. talked about it, I learned it's already been happening the last few years, it's scaled up with producers that actually bring you real quality. So we've got a huge shipment of it.
Secretary Robert Kennedy has now put in a call to the CDC to stop putting fluoride in drinking water. I want to get your thoughts on that, as health advisors have constantly said that they advise against that.
Yeah, it's an interesting issue. I don't profess to be an expert in chemistry. I do constitutional law primarily, but I'll tell you that I think it deserves, from what I've read and from what I understand, it deserves real evaluation. There's a concern that it may be having a negative effect on the health of children, and obviously we have an obligation at the federal government level to look into that. So I'm as interested as you are. I don't have the answers, but I think it's one that the question has been begged and it needs to be addressed. So,
Mr. Speaker.
All right, so
HHS Secretary Robert Kennedy has now put in a call to the CDC to stop putting fluoride in drinking water. I want to get your thoughts on that, as health advisors have constantly said that they advise against that.
Yeah, it's an interesting issue. I don't profess to be an expert in chemistry. I do constitutional law primarily, but I'll tell you that I think it deserves, from what I've read and from what I understand, it deserves
It'll go quick, though, at thealexjonesstore.com. This is the highest quality USP grade that supplies it to a whole bunch of the top medical clinics. We've got it at the lowest price you're going to find, and huge discounts, up to 50% off if you are a subscriber at thealexjonesstore.com. But I just want to tell you, be careful. because I put a full dropper into water, drank half of it, forgot it wasn't placebo, and 30 minutes later, I felt like I was plugged into an electrical socket. So be very careful with this. I don't know what Kennedy's taking when he took 3 droppers in water. I put 1 dropper in water, banged back, half of a 12-ounce glass, forgot to drink the rest, got busy, and I was like, what the hell's going on 30 minutes later? I was like, oh, I took that methylene blue. You'll find USP versions out there that I've taken that I know are not as strong as this. This is the strongest there is. This is
enlightenment, reach
mouthwashes.
If you try to go to Peru, or I get it,
sacrifice or any life is our control because there's
job. They want Iran
from the CC Jinping memorize.
But I just want to tell you, be careful, because I put a full dropper into water, drank half of it, forgot it wasn't placebo.
Taste, and it keeps Alex that's very paranoid about biological war and cast all over civilization, whether or not they're linked to autism.
The hepatitis B vaccine, they looked at children, and from the biggest database in the world, the Vaccine Safety Data Link, they looked at children who got the hepatitis.
But, Trump went along with warp speed. It was his big failure. He's been told all the people boo it. He knows people are angry. I have another report coming out on that. Trump's been basically going after Fauci and others for the origin situation. And Fauci's now saying, oh, there's going to be a new, more deadly virus coming out that's going to derail Trump. And so this is really creepy. Trump needs to get ahead of it this time.
Hey, good morning, good people. How you doing? Welcome.
Kennedy's the man to fight it. But this is still disheartening. I don't hate him. He's still doing a lot of great work. But you can't play politics with people's lives and with what has been happening to our children. It's just too important. But regardless of what Kennedy does, we're all going to continue here in the independent real media to expose the fact that these shots don't protect you. In fact, they hurt you. It's all part of Big Pharma and Big Medicine's plan to have a sick population they can suck off of and control. And ultimately, it's about depopulation. I know Trump, for a fact, has been told that because I've told him, many others have told him as well. Another report coming out.
Drumming up.
But I just want to tell you, be careful, because I put a full dropper into water, drank half of it, forgot it wasn't placebo, and 30 minutes later, I felt like I was plugged into an electrical socket. So be very careful with this. I don't know what Kennedy's taking when he took 3 droppers in water. I put 1 dropper in water, banged back, half of a 12-ounce glass, forgot to drink the rest, got busy, and I was like, what the hell's going on 30 minutes later? I was like, oh, I took that methylene blue. You'll find USP versions out there that I've taken that I know are not as strong as this. This is the strongest there is. This is insane. This is a game changer. It's called Ultra Methylene Blue, exclusively at thealexjonesstore.com, and it funds the Second American Revolution worldwide. And the HHS head, RFK Jr., that is devastating Big Pharma and just banning all their poisons and garbage and revoking their liability protections for 2,000, quote, food additives. This guy looks great for his age, just insane, is fueled by methylene blue. But I want to say again, he took 3 droppers in the video we saw. I don't know how he does that, because I'm on 1 dropper and I'm worried I can't go to sleep tonight. So again, get your methylene blue right now of the highest quality that funds the InfoWar, a total 360 win at thealexjonesstore.com.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, what a crazy day. So much to unpack. I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know where to begin. I mean, I'm looking at these clips that I have on the sheet here, and I can't even choose which one to start with. I guess there's no better place to start on InfoWars than with shadow government. Let's go to clip number 12. This is Adam Schiff talking about forming a shadow government. We'll watch this and unpack it, as well as some other clips.
Extraordinary step of convening this unprecedented hearing. We brought together both chambers of Congress, the Senate and the House, to conduct real oversight and to serve as a check and balance, to hold those who misuse power to account and to carry out our constitutional duty. Convening this hearing was not our first choice. We have tried to get our Republican colleagues to hold hearings, to do meaningful oversight, to assert Congress's authority as an independent branch of governent.
He's just mad because he can't afford another pencil neck because all the tariffs on China, and China makes all the pencils.
Responsibility.
Honestly, I don't even think I can listen to him anymore. Please, please. I know Alex did a report on that clip, but the audacity of these people is just utterly astounding to me. And I don't know if all the allegations about him and the hotel in Los Angeles and the accidental murder of some boy that he was sleeping with are true. I don't know if that's just QAnon stuff or what, but I can tell you what, he doesn't give a damn about human trafficking. He doesn't care about 100,000 people dead from fentanyl every year. He is just interested in satisfying the political interests of an international community. And you know what? I'm getting to the point right now where I'm starting to think that China is behind a lot more of our problems than anyone else and anyone ever thought. And it's not some Red Scare McCarthyism that has me thinking this. It's not just the TikTok stuff and the cultural color revolution that we're witnessing. It's not just the fact that their demographic is totally imploding and that they've basically gotten a monopoly on everything that we need ever. And it's not just that the CCP is totally satisfied or even okay with or even conducive to the death of millions of its own people without even batting an eye. It's not just the fact that they're so brainwashed that they still worship Mao and a cult of personality, despite the fact that everyone living in China today still knows someone or is related to someone who died during the Great Leap Forward. I'll tell you what it is that really bothers me about the Chinese, their culture. You want to hear a little xenophobia from Chase Geiser. The thing that bothers me most about China is that you can find countless videos, Chinese women and men who can play Mozart perfectly. They can play Beethoven perfectly, Rachmaninoff, these European composers from Russia or Germany. You put them in front of a piano and they follow the rules. They have an astronomical amount of discipline. But I can't for the life of me think of one damn Chinese composer. See, they can play that which other nations and cultures create, but they cannot create anything of their own. They're like a parasite. They have to steal our artificial intelligence technology. They have to steal our weapons technology. They teach their kids how to do math and memorize stuff, but they don't teach them any skills because skills require creativity. And everything they're teaching their kids, frankly, is going to be moot because AI is going to be able to do everything they're teaching their kids. All they know is order and obedience to authority and discipline. And it's why they've arrived at this place where they're totally imploding on themselves. I mean, after thousands of years of being a nation, accomplishment after accomplishment, dynasty after dynasty, rich heritage and history, bravery, courage, conviction, principle. Then communism comes along and the best they can do is play a song perfectly that someone else wrote. And you got the Adam Schiffs and the Joe Bidens and the Hunter Bidens and the Nancy Pelosi's and others who are just happy to sell out all of our interests to the CCP. They're happy to sell out the very culture responsible for innovating that which is copied to the parasite that copies it. And I know that they've got some things that are impressive about him. I know Xi Jinping can be a little bit of a badass. He certainly stood up Justin Trudeau, but that's easy to do. Anybody can stand up Justin Trudeau. I don't know if you remember that clip from a couple years ago. Justin kept trying to talk to Xi Jinping. But why is it that we would fly their flag in San Francisco, clean up the streets of San Francisco for the first time in decades, having our Marines hold a Chinese flag while Xi Jinping visits us? We know that they're imploding. We know that they're trying to subvert the dollar as the global reserve currency, which would ruin America and, frankly, the world for that matter, for at least some period of time. We know that they're funding terrorism in the Middle East. We know that they're a major threat to Taiwan, which we need for superconductors and semiconductors because we don't make anything here anymore. We know that they're sending their soldiers now to fight alongside Russia against Ukraine while we fund Ukraine. And I'm not for funding Ukraine, but this is certainly an adversary. Why are we rolling out the red carpet for the Red King? And I just keep thinking about Amy Klobuchar and the fact that she would come out and just lie about tariffs being negative for the middle class in America while she's being funded by more billionaires than any other Democrat except Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and maybe one other. While her highest funders are Wells Fargo and Comcast. While they advocate, while she and her others, her ilk, advocate for censorship to the same extent that the CCP advocates for censorship. I mean, the reason our movies suck in the United States now, you realize, is because the Chinese market has become so valuable to Hollywood that they have to make sure all of our content that they put out, all of their content that they put out, is compliant with the tenets and principles and creed of the CCP. Movie Gravity came out with Sandra Bullock. They got the International Space Station. Historically speaking, the International Space Station was a partnership, I believe, between Russia and the United States. But in that movie, for example, for some reason, the International Space Station was a partnership between China and the United States. Oh, because they wanted the movie to go out in the Chinese market. Okay, well, Disney buys Star Wars and proceeds to launch 3 of the worst Star Wars movies ever made with some bizarre and unnecessary Asian side hero. Oh, you got to appeal to the Chinese market. And all of these movies have like these weird collectivist values. They're all about individual sacrifice to the masses rather than self-actualization like our film and cinema used to be. I mean, we literally sold our culture out for $1 from the CCP, $1 that we gave them because we allowed them to make everything for us. I just wish that the complicated nature of our politics could be reduced and simplified to a point where everyone's immediate reaction would be to shame these people. But it's so complicated. I mean, I have to go into a sophisticated argument about the IMEC corridor versus the Belt and Road Initiative, how tariffs adjust manufacturing, demographic implosion over the course of the next 10 years, and global reserve currencies and the nature of fractional reserve banking in order to explain to you how much of a retard Amy Klobuchar is. It should be easier than that. I mean, it's obvious just looking at her, but I think that's why we've arrived at the place that we've arrived in the United States of America, because it takes like 45 minutes to explain how evil these people are, and nobody has 45 minutes. I got this just on the desk. Put China in its place. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth at Panama Canal. I want to be very clear. China did not build this canal. China does not operate this canal, and China will not weaponize this canal. Let's watch this clip right here of Pete Hegseth.
I want to be very clear. China did not build this canal.
We're going to war with China.
China does not operate this canal, and China will not weaponize this canal. Together with Panama in the lead, we will keep the canal secure and available for all nations through the deterrent power of the strongest, most effective, and most lethal fighting force in the world. We will do this in partnership with Panama. Together, we will take back the Panama Canal from China's influence. And we will do this along with other capable, like-minded allies and partners.
And I've been trying to tell you guys that Iran and China are the same thing. Just like you have to think about the CIA and Ukraine is the same thing, or Ukraine and NATO is the same thing. Ukraine was a proxy war with Russia. Iran would be a proxy war with China. And every time our leaders, and I'm not criticizing them, I understand this is a real conflict. This is a real thing that we have to be strong against. But every time our leaders talk about the Indo-Pacific region and how important it is to protect our security there, and in another breath or another clip, they're talking about escalations with Iran. I mean, this is clip 28 of Trump talking about the Iran talks that are coming up. Let's watch.
I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. and I hate to say it, great danger because they can't have a nuclear weapon.
So is that a yes?
You know, it's not a complicated formula. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's all there is.
So
You can't have
US
it.
ready?
Right now we have countries that have nuclear power that shouldn't have it, but I'm sure we'll be able to negotiate out of that too as part of this later on down the line. But Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if the talks are successful, I actually think it'll be a very bad day for Iran if that's the case. Yeah.
And here's clip number 38 on how China doesn't have the cards in this tariff trade war that's going on. These escalations are just totally coinciding. Why is it that escalations with Iran, Russia, and China are all happening at the same time? It's because there's some convergence. It's like Mercury is in retrograde in the total socioeconomic global environment. Let's watch clip 38.
Trump has maximum negotiating leverage right here, right now. And I think it would be a mistake for anyone to think otherwise. And as I said, many of our trading partners, they have queued up and they have kept their cool. They have not escalated, and they will get priority in the queue. I think it was a big mistake, this Chinese escalation, because they're playing with a pair of twos. Traditionally, if you look at the history of the trade negotiations, we are the deficit country. So what do we lose by the Chinese raising tariffs on us? We export 1/5 to them of what they export to us. So that is a losing hand for them.
He's absolutely right. They're in no position to negotiate. That's why it's so scary. Meanwhile, you have the globalists taking advantage of this weakening of the United States and Europe and China and Russia all at the same time. Probably why they're perpetuating all these policies to weaken us, because the globalists themselves are weakened and they want to establish their own central bank digital currency in the aftermath of this collapse. Here is clip number 42 of Pritzker. And the reason I'll show this, I'll disclose on the other side of it. Pritzker coming out talking about the brave young people standing up to tyranny. We all know he's on Soros' payroll. We all know he's on the globalist payroll. Let's watch.
Across the country, young people are standing up to the Trump administration and fighting back against Republican policies that are destroying their future. I have one message for the youth of our country. Thank you, and let's go. When you protest, when you speak out, when you show up, when you sign up voters, when you vote, you're telling them you're not going to take it anymore. Trump and Republicans are taking away your civil rights protections, shutting down public education, and making it harder for you to get a job. They want to take the country backward, and they're lying to you. You can stop them and hold them accountable. Keep making your voices heard by going online and posting about how they're harming our communities. Donald Trump and Elon Musk are attempting to dismantle our country piece by piece. Your energy, your activism, your willingness to fight for your generation will help stop Donald Trump from doing any more damage to your future. Thank you for giving us all hope.
That fat ass is the governor of Illinois. And I grew up in Illinois. It's insanely corrupt. You're more likely to go to prison if you've been a governor of Illinois than if you're a high school dropout in Illinois, statistically speaking. That's how corrupt Illinois is. Where Obama came from, it's where Blagojevich was when he went to jail. And you've got Pritzker there with the audacity to read some script about young people standing up to tyranny as if he's so relatable, standing in front of a castle, holding a hawk as he wears a polo. I mean, we are talking about a class of people so abundantly out of touch, so abundantly transcendent to the people they claim to serve and love. All they do is exploit and manipulate their base. They weaponize their base with the astronomical amount of funding from Soros and these other globalist institutions whose sole objective is to lie while censoring the truth so they can control thought, so they can then control speech, so they can then control action, And they weaponize the resources that they have now in order to guarantee that they have resources in the future, because all that people in power really want are two things. They either want to sustain their existing power or to expand their existing power. What happened to Rome? That's why it expanded until it contracted and became a church. It's what happened to the Soviet Union. It's what happened to Nazi Germany. They just get addicted to expanding. Obviously, he's addicted to expanding. I mean, I don't know how much more he could possibly expand. But they weaponize their resources to gain this bizarre control, because there's nothing that irks them or makes them so paranoid or feel so vulnerable or weak as to think that maybe one day they won't be as powerful as they are now. Maybe one day they'll actually dissipate and return to dust, as is declared in the Bible. And that's my concern with these globalists philosophically in conjunction with these technocrats, because there is a whole class of incredibly bright, incredibly well-funded people who are actually trying to achieve immortality for themselves, and they're simultaneously building the infrastructure to ensure that once they're immortal, there's no way that they'll ever lose the power that they have. They don't just want to live forever, they want to live forever a certain way. And so they accumulate over generation, over generation, over generation. And they pat each other on the back, and they conspire together, and they just trash civilization after civilization after civilization. They steal, print, rob, manipulate, blackmail. As they quietly develop this technology, and they try to distract you by saying, oh, the direwolves are back. You guys like Game of Thrones? Direwolves are back. When really it's that technology that's being used to make human-animal hybrid organs that are in a legal gray area, so they can ensure that they can just replace all their body parts with new cloned versions of their own organs as they age, as they sit in these pressurized chambers. I've seen clips of this guy. Who's the guy that always wears the shirt? It says "Don't die" or "Join and don't die." He looks like a vampire. He's talking about all the supplements he always takes, and he's always in some pressurized chamber, and he's constantly obsessed with everything he can to extend his telomeres on his DNA so that he never ages. And he constantly posts his blood results to show that his levels are that of a man so much younger than him. All in the context of Canada running ads for euthanasia featuring only white people. Like, you want to die? We'll pay for it. Or the government will pay for it. Our company will kill you. And then we'll use that money for research to ensure that a technocratic class of people can live forever. And this is why people are so reluctant to trust Elon Musk, because, you know, he's developing Neuralink and artificial intelligence, and he's been in this class for an extended period of time. He was involved with the electronic vehicles, and he was involved with PayPal. I understand why people are wary of Elon Musk, but don't you think that maybe he realized that the depopulation agenda of these technocratic globalists was going to totally eradicate the species off the face of the earth? I mean, these people are crazy. You see how desperate China's acting because its population is imploding. You see how desperate Russia is acting because its population is imploding. Japan, South Korea, population's all imploding. The United States, it was imploding, so we desperately allowed 30 million people to come into the country. Just imagine if the entire population of the earth just begins to shrink, how desperate and violent and volatile everyone will become. And it's almost like divine providence. It's almost like it's a sign of God, because I don't know how many of you know this out there in the audience. But if the Earth's gravity was just a little bit stronger, if it was just a little bit more powerful, then rocket propulsion would not be strong enough to get any object off of the surface of the Earth. I mean, it is like a miracle that we live on a planet that just barely allows us to use rocket technology to get anything out into orbit. And to me, that's like a sign from God that it is our destiny to expand, to multiply, to become interplanetary, to sustain humanity as a whole rather than our own individuality in perpetuity. That's what's so bizarre about it, because these technocrats would have swaths of people sacrifice themselves to some ideal that would allow said technocrats to live forever. While those of us on the right, the populist right, who fight for individualism and fight against self-sacrifice because we don't believe that any human is to be sacrificed or any life is to be sacrificed, who advocate for individual rights and private property rights, we're actually the ones that are okay with dying and moving on so long as it perpetuates the health of the species. To quote Shakespeare, these violent times have violent ends. So if I was going to guess what's going to happen in the next 10 years, I'd say explicit war with Iran, probably a little bit of a war with China, at least through Iran as a proxy. We'll probably secure the IMEC corridor and sustain the dollar as the global reserve currency and gain total control of the Middle East, but not without killing millions upon millions of people. Artificial intelligence will replace most of the jobs here in the United States, but we will diversify our manufacturing to India, Mexico, and other places. And that, coupled with robotics, will make everything so inexpensive that we'll basically be sitting pretty here for the 21st century. That's what I think is going to happen. As long as Russia or China don't use their nuclear weapons in their implosion in some self-defense way. And maybe it's the case that Iran already has nukes and that they'll use them in a war against Israel, but then I don't think the United States even cares because then everybody over there is dead and we have total control. I don't think Mossad controls CIA or the United States. I think the CIA controls Mossad. It existed a year before Israel even existed. Mossad's budget is like $3.5 billion a year, which is 1/6 the budget of the CIA. I don't believe for a minute that Mossad controls CIA. I think the CIA controls Mossad. And when the CIA wants dirt on our politicians, they pay or they hire or they pressure Mossad to do it so that it can't be traced back to them. There's no paper trail. That's what's really going on here. We have a Machiavellian, utilitarian intelligence community that is weaponizing the intelligence communities of other nations, which we have allowed to become dependent on us. And they're engaged in terrible crimes against humanity, terrible violations of rules and law, but there's no accountability because there's no paper trail. And it's all done in the name of national security. That's what's really sick about it. The CIA actually thinks that when it's raping you, it's for your own good. That's what totally blows my mind. All right, we got one more hour of the Alex Jones Show. We've got more reports coming from Alex Jones in the final hour of the broadcast. But before we go to break, I do want to remind you about ultramethylene blue. Ultramethylene blue is exactly like the blue substance from the TV movie Dune. I don't know if you've ever watched Dune. It's probably my favorite sci-fi series ever made. It totally inspired me. I love the message. I love everything about it. Basically, this kid, has to take this blue substance in order to achieve enlightenment, reach self-actualization, and save his entire species from decimation by a corrupt galactic empire. Well, that's what ultramethylene blue does for you and me. It empowers us to reach self-actualization by having more energy, more focus, more stamina. It helps our body absorb oxygen more efficiently, drops off electrons in our cells, empowers the mitochondria. I mean, this stuff will make you feel like you're plugged into the wall at a time when we need Americans to be the best version of themselves. I don't call on the listeners to sacrifice themselves for the InfoWar. I call on our listeners to invest in their own health, mind, and body, and invest in freedom by supporting us at thealexjonesstore.com. Not only will you experience the amazing benefits of ultramethylene blue if you go to thealexjonesstore.com right now and subscribe for 50% off to ensure you always get a bottle and pay the least for it, but you will be keeping InfoWars on the air. And folks, I wish I could tell you everything that I know, but we are under relentless attack. Alex, his family, this crew, these hosts, everybody here. And it's because we're fighting for you. And we're not doing it because we have some selfish technocratic ambition. We're doing it because we know that when we die, we want to die with a clean conscience. So clean your conscience and clean out your body at the same time at thealexjonesstore.com.
I mean, look at gold right now. Holy mackerel. I mean, it is up just enormously. So yeah, I'm pitching it to you right now. I mean, I'm handing out, Gatorade at a marathon. I mean, I'm handing out ice water in the Sahara. I mean, it is such the top-rated, the biggest company, because they're the best, and he's a patriot, and he keeps the show on the air. I mean, look, they're getting the most calls and stuff they've ever had. So, and I knew this was coming. And I was telling you last year and a half, I said, get in now, get in now. And you're like, well, now it's really luck. It's going to go up, people. Or I'm an upside down world. I mean, there's nothing sure in this world but your relationship with Jesus Christ. All right? Other than that, though, gold and silver in investments, and I get it, and have had it for emergency backup, a hedge against insanity. Okay? So I'm done plugging. KEPM.com/gold 720-605-3900.
Here's where all eyes now are on gold and silver. Because gold went over $3,000 an ounce, it's at an all-time high. That's a very strong technical and psychological threshold number, that 3,000. So now that the world is looking at gold, the world is also going to be looking at silver. So even the massive growth that we've already seen, I'm guessing it's just the beginning. Every podcast in the Patriot world has some kind of a gold dealer sponsoring them, right? And it's like, oh, we're selling these shipwrecked coins. They sell semi-numismatic coins, they sell rare things, they sell things with a story. And I'm warning you, just because gold is good, not all gold is good. Just because silver is good, not all silver is good. I've seen literally, Alex, hundreds of invoices from people who have purchased from other dealers that have been on these things, and they're paying $60 to $80 an ounce. Let me explain how this works, because it's not good. So a dealer will actually commission, like the Canadian Royal Mint, and people will think, oh, this is a Canadian Royal Mint coin. No, Canadian Royal Mint makes Canadian maple leaves, 1 ounce. If you have some kind of a 2 ounce or 1 1/4 ounce wildlife coin that you're paying $60 or $80 an ounce for, here's what happens when you liquidate it. So you bought it for $80 an ounce when silver was, let's say, 28. That's when I was looking at a ton of these invoices. So what happens when you liquidate it? You send it to the depository. The depository says, we don't want this crap. We're going to give you 4% less than spot. We're going to melt it down into a coin or a bar. So you paid 80 and you get the same price as bullion when you liquidate it. What that tells me is silver really has to move to $60 to $80 an ounce for you to break even. This is the worst stuff, but people love to sell them because they're higher commission. I don't play that game. So if you think you've been ripped off on something like that because the story sadly resonates with you, call our office and we'll see if we can unwind it for you and do something to get you into a better spot.
You said 2 weeks ago, I think it'll be above 3,000 in 2 weeks. Now it's over 333 right now. 3,033. Gut level. You're not predicting it, but just as a man, as an economist, where do you think gold is in a month?
3,100 in a month, like in the next 3 to 4 weeks, and then I think it gets to 3,200 by the beginning of the summer. And we could literally see 4,000 as momentum starts to gather and as the eyes of the world get on it. And then silver, probably 50 to 75.
People need to call you, do a free consultation, leave your name and number, 720-605-3900, KEPM.com/gold. Do the form, they'll call you back, they'll do a free consultation, they can roll over your IRAs, 401ks. Do it now, folks. I only steer you in the right direction. It's a no-brainer. Dr. Kirk Elliott, thank you so much.
My pleasure. See ya.
It's good to be right, isn't it? Wow.
So fluoride in the water, good thing, bad thing, time to rethink?
I think, Chris, it is a time to rethink, but I think it's important with that emphasis on rethink. Let's look at the science. Let's do it in a transparent way. Let's determine. There is some data that a number of people have looked at that attention deficit disorder, developmental issues in children can be negatively impacted. But let's look at the data, put it out in public. Let's debate it.
Have you looked at it? What do you think?
I think there's data for developmental problems, Chris, okay? It's interesting that in the old days, when we didn't have fluoride in toothpaste, fluoride was really important in changing cavities in teeth. I know I had half my mouth as a cavity when I was a child. I was constantly in the dentist office having my teeth being full of cavities. So clearly fluoride did a lot for dentistry. But I would say, once we started putting fluoride in toothpaste, there are lots of places in our country where we probably get adequate fluoride without having fluoride in water. But again, I'm not going to come out and say, hey, it should be eliminated. I say, hey, let's look at the data. Let's have CDC, NIH, EPA, put the data out in a transparent way. Let's debate it, and let's see whether we really still need this today. It's interesting that most bottled water doesn't have any fluoride, right? And so you can look at whether we really need it or not, and let's just debate it. My own instincts are that we really don't need it to be a compulsory in our drinking water, and that many jurisdictions will begin to take it out, and I don't think we'll be any worse the wear. And it'd be interesting to see in Utah, where the event was today, there's 27 jurisdictions within Utah that don't have fluoride, and there's 2 that do have fluoride. Let's look to see is there any difference in the development of the children that grew up in the things that had fluoride versus not. Let science give us some data here. Kennedy has said, and I do believe him, I'm an advocate for him. I do believe that he wants science to drive the issue. So let's use science to drive the issue.
Fluoride should not be in our water. Fluoride had a strong justification in the 1940s when it was added, and people didn't understand the science, and they thought its benefit to our teeth was systemic. And by drinking it, it would enter your body and somehow protect your teeth. Now we know that there is no systemic advantage, zero systemic advantage, and that the only advantage comes from topical application. So it's the water that passes through your mouth. You can achieve that benefit from brushing your teeth. And in the era of fluoridated toothpastes and mouthwashes, it makes no sense to have fluoride in our water. The evidence against fluoride is overwhelming. In animals, in animal models, and in human models, we know that it causes IQ loss, profound IQ loss, and it's dose-related. So if the more fluoride you get, the higher levels in your drinking water, your urine, the more likely it is you will lose IQ and also other neurological injuries like ADHD. It affects, science indicates that it affects kidney health, it affects liver health, that it causes hypothyroidism, that it causes osteoarthritis. Women who are more exposed have up to 50% more hip fractures than women who are unexposed. It causes fluoridasis in between 40 and 80% of our kids. It makes no sense to have it in our water supply. And I'm very, very proud of this state for being the first state to ban it, and I hope many more will come.
There's poison in the water, ladies and gentlemen. Poison in the food, poison in the air, poison on the airwaves for your mind. There is a war on for your mind and body and heart and soul, all happening at once, which is why we need your support more now than ever. We've got a 1-minute break coming up in 26 seconds. After that break, I'm going to show you a report from Alex Jones, a clip which I'd seen for the first time today. I absolutely adore it. In the meantime, please go to the AlexJonesStore.com right now. Be the reason that we're still on the air. If you haven't yet, please sign up for the VIP Club. It's the best way in the world to ensure that we will always be on the air. We need more subscribers desperately. Go to the AlexJonesStore.com right now. I'll be right back.
I haven't done DMT, but I know a lot of famous people that have and others. And the government since the 70s has been doing intravenous drip with it. It just didn't become popular the last 20 years by eating it. And I've talked to well-known people off record who have gone to these big DMT rituals at sacred sites, because reportedly those are like gates or places where dimensionally they've been doing sacrifices for thousands of years. So maybe the things hang around there or it's a ley line. They're not sure. But if you go there and take DMT, they're having groups of 20, 30, 40 people who are seeing the same hallucination on it at the same time. They basically say aliens come up the steps of the pyramid, or, and everybody's seeing it at the same time. They're having this.
Maybe it's not a hallucination.
Well, exactly. If this individual was seeing it, it's one thing.
Right.
But then sometimes people in the group even get attacked by these things.
Taking ayahuasca, taking DMT, taking any kind of hallucinogenic drug, which I've done, as a child. But now knowing what I know, I would be very afraid that those drugs open up a portal for something to enter me.
They thin the veil. Exactly. And the Bible says pharmakia leads to conjuring and witchcraft, all in the Old Testament. And it talks about all the other tribes that were sacrificing people, and Jehovah says don't do that anymore.
Have some respect for the unknown. I mean, I'm not pretending to understand any of this stuff. And again, I've taken LSD. I've taken LSD. I get it. But I was 15. Now I have a lot of respect for the things I don't understand, and it is a kind of peculiar American attitude that whatever it is we don't know has got to be great.
Exactly.
And there's not true.
Well, exactly. Our optic nerve, they've proven, picks up a lot more in the light spectrum that we see. So we have we have biological blinders so we can focus on the third dimension. and not be completely freaked out by all this other stuff that's right near our dimension and kind of like a frequency bleeding in. And so exactly, you roll the dice when you do that. And all the ancients, even if you try to go to Peru or Brazil or whatever, take those drugs, they'll say, this is dangerous, you gotta get ready for weeks, we're gonna guide you through it. And I'm not saying even do it with those
But
drugs.
not dangerous in a sense that it will, like, affect your serotonin levels or hurt your body. I mean, which is, possible, I guess, also, but, or it'll kill you. I'm not even worried about that. I would be much more afraid of being possessed by something from outside me. I know people whose lives have gone in the wrong direction after doing that, or who've had important relationships dissolve, which is always a sign of evil. God brings us together, dark forces divide us.
I have that exact same instinctive caution not to do it. I like the frequency my brain's tuned to now. And I've talked to people that do the rituals that are really into it. They say, no, it is true. Some people, get haunted by spirits and demons when they take it, but most people that doesn't happen.
Kind of a big risk.
Well, in high school, I took acid a few times too, and I've taken mushrooms a few times. That's kind of barely, manipulates the space-time fabric. The walls start dripping a little. But yeah, you take DMT or ayahuasca, which is, I guess, a longer breakdown form of it. I mean, reality goes gone.
Well, I remember flipping out on acid 40 years ago, 1984, when I was 15. I remember it very well. I'll never forget it as long as I draw breath. And I was being attacked by howling, leering, grinning cartoon characters jumping right into my face and screaming at me. And wow. I mean, I think it's pretty conventional, but I don't know. I mean, I think I
would say that's conventional. That's maybe 1 out of 100. That's still the bad trip.
Well, it was a bad trip, but I feel like that's a very serious thing.
Describe that more. Howling, leering demons.
Oh yeah, I remember I was in my bedroom. I was home for Thanksgiving vacation from boarding school, and I had taken a couple hits of acid on an airplane flying from New England to California.
Oh wow.
Which is obviously not wise, but I was 15. I don't know. Someone handed me a bunch of acid. I want acid. And I was totally fine until I got back, and then I went upstairs, and it was the night before Thanksgiving, and I smoked pot with my brother.
Oh wow.
And it just unleashed this whole thing.
Did you look in the mirror?
Yeah, my brother's face turned into a rat with like this line. And I was like, wow, I think I'm flipping out. And then I spent like the next 6 hours being attacked by these figures, characters. I don't know what they were, but very, very vivid. Very, very.
Describe them.
I remember looking at a picture in my bedroom, and I'd just gotten home after spending all day tripping on this airplane, so I was kind of out of it. But I remember looking at this picture, and all of a sudden, whatever was in the picture, like a dog or something, jumped out at me and started screaming at me and leering with like teeth and laughing in my face. And then this one jumped out there, and then all, throughout my entire bedroom, these things were jumping out and screaming at me and laughing at me.
This is what I've thought and talked to folks and heard and felt. And everybody knows you're a good person. People that are already kind of worldly and really don't, and are almost to the dark side, are in it. Then it's wonderful, and they're your friends and everything. But if the demons pick up that you've got a good trajectory, they just hate you, and if they think they can't get you, they just want to hurt you.
It was only when I quit doing, anything, including Advil, that I got moral clarity, I would say. And so I do think that stuff is a vector for actual evil, for things entering you and controlling your behavior. And that's
what word for word, as you know, the Bible says that. If you take pharmakia, meaning pharmaceuticals, and that is the gateway to hell. It says it opens it up.
Have you always believed that there were forces that you couldn't see that were real?
Like definitely something outside was telling me things. And so by the time I got older, I realized that more. And then once I started tuning into it, it then just became more second nature. And then it was kind of like I was getting the information, not even thinking about where, not even processing it anymore.
It's only the affluent whites who've been convinced or trained to believe that, the only things that are real are things that can be experienced with the senses. I grew up in a very affluent, white world. But whenever I go outside that world, deal with like black people or poorer people or, people from other countries, the Caribbean, Africa, Latin America, they would just say like out loud, that stuff's real.
Yeah.
Like where I grew up, the only sort of poorer people were Mexican immigrants. We would always say, oh, they're so superstitious. So superstitious. But, you know.
I think it's what you said earlier. Superstition is a respect for the unknown.
Yes, exactly. What we deride as superstition is actually a description of reality in many cases, and it's also a sign of respect.
And like you said, middle class or upper middle class, affluent whites we're taught in the last 60, 70 years only believe in mainstream corporate science that's always changing every day anyways, and you're the humanist, you're God, we're going to become God.
Yes.
Ray Kurzweil said, I don't believe in God yet, I'm going to be God. Well, what an arrogant statement. Whereas realizing that you are finite, but part of something bigger, that is the respect of it. And so that's really kind of what boilerplate Satanism is I'm God.
The only people who retained their respect for the unknown and understood the limits of their own intellect were on the fringes of American society. That the mainstream of American society just was taught, probably by design, I would think, but you just like dismiss all that stuff.
Exactly. But I was about to add a wrinkle. I think you probably, because you've been at the heights of everything in your position, and I know I've been able to see some of this. When you actually get into the ultra rich, though, and also the top artists and people, they're completely into the occult.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So
no, you're totally right. It's almost like the IQ scale. It's like dumb people understand the truth, really smart people know the truth, and in the broad middle, what do they call it, midwits?
Yeah.
They've convinced themselves that they got it all figured out.
Educated idiots.
Educated idiots. But the truly smart people I know, Matthias Desmet, for example, they're like delighted to admit the limits of their knowledge because they're smart enough. First of all, they're secure.
Was it Aristotle said, I know nothing?
Yeah, well, of course. The beginning of wisdom was my father always.
Fascinating video there of Tucker Carlson with Alex Jones. And look, I agree with everything that they said in that conversation. But I also know that you don't have to take a hallucinogen in order to see a demon. You can just watch MSNBC. I'm going to show you clip number 31 here. Just unbelievable self-righteousness. Let's watch this and unpack it.
Have to grapple with it because it's the snake, it's the beast coiled up in the heart, the bosom of the country, as Frederick Douglass said. And the fact that they are doubling down on this shows you what kind of human beings they actually are.
Say more.
We chose a felon who is more interested in loyalty, who's more interested in retribution, who's more interested in grift than in democracy. And we chose a felon because we didn't want to elect a black woman. So to read that, to actually explicate that, is to say we would rather destroy the republic than for that to have happened. And until we grapple with it, there's no amount of protesting I could do. There's no amount of resistance that could come into play to actually force 78 million people to grapple with what motivated them to put themselves in this position.
We chose a felon because we didn't want to elect a black person. I wonder if he realizes that the entirety of Western civilization is built off of a culture, a metaphysical philosophy, a religion, based on its savior being wrongfully convicted. Right? I mean, didn't Jesus Christ say, my God, why have you forsaken me on the cross after he was wrongfully convicted? Didn't he say, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do? So just because Donald Trump is a felon makes him guilty, as if no innocent man has ever been convicted of a crime by a corrupt judicial system, as if Otto Warmbier in North Korea wasn't innocent, at least much more innocent than the sentence was justified. It was like 12 years hard labor. We did not vote for Donald Trump because the alternative was a black woman. We voted for Donald Trump because it became abundantly clear that he was the only outsider that represented the interests of the people instead of the political class, that the entire system, which had been corrupted over decades, was weaponized against him, just as it is weaponized against us, the people. And all of the other alternatives were abundantly unqualified, corrupt, evil, incompetent, and retarded. I mean, Joe Biden couldn't even hold a sentence together. Absolutely murdered in that June 30th debate. Couldn't walk up the stairs. Everybody on his staff is admitting he's all hopped up on drugs, and then they got a sun down him at 4 o'clock. He's eating ice cream cones right before he goes to bed, like you do with people that have Alzheimer's. Totally incoherent in every way, shape, and form. And then there's a coup to replace him, so there's no primary whatsoever for like the second or third time in the Democratic Party, with Kamala Harris, who is perhaps the worst attorney general that's ever set foot in California. I mean, the people that she put away in prison, the mothers who were in prison because their children were truant at school, the people that she kept in prison after their sentence was up, they just stayed in prison for whatever reason. While she would come out and adopt different accents to different audiences as if she's Hillary Clinton in the 1990s and it's not going to come out what she's doing. What was it? What can be unburdened by what has been? I mean, there was a whole coup. And this childless woman who even admitted that she wanted to depopulate the planet, that depopulation was good for the environment. And you think that we chose Donald Trump because he was white? We elected a black guy in 2008. And then again in 2012. The race thing is not the issue. In fact, with ESG scores and diversity, equity, and inclusion scores, it's pretty obvious that we favor the minority communities here. And with an entire political establishment hell-bent on bringing anyone into the United States of America legally or not, as long as they are not white, same with Europe. What is it, 7% of the world's population is actually white or Caucasian? We're the minority in the world here. I'm sorry that you think that we're on some high horse and that we control the masses beneath us because of our racial privilege, because we took advantage of other people. Let me tell you something, folks. Everybody takes advantage of other people. Everybody cheats, lies, steals, manipulates, and exploits. The only reason white people made it to the top in the world is because white people disproportionately adopted Western values, like Christianity, like reason, like metaphysical philosophy, like private property rights, and anyone else, regardless of their race or immutable characteristics, who adopted Western values also did very well. You don't have to be white to be Western. But they use this correlation as causation argument. It's totally retarded. Where just because 90% of people who are white are part of Western civilization, like just because all the people at the top happen to be white in the United States, it's like the people that say that the Jews are controlling everything because Jews are disproportionately represented in different industries. Are you sure that they're disproportionately represented in those industries because they're Jewish? Or, I don't know, is it the fact that Jewish people don't get divorced nearly the same rate, so they raise their family themselves and they send their kids to college way more than any other demographic? And once their kids go to college, they go to get advanced degrees? Or is it because perhaps for thousands of years, everybody has been blaming the Jews for all of their problems, so the Jews have decided that they're really going to stick together because it's more difficult for them to work with other people or trust other people given what's happened over and over again? And by sticking together and having this form of nepotism, it's allowed them to be incredibly successful in business because they do business with one another. Honestly, I've never met a Jew I didn't like. I have problems with Israel. I don't like Bibi Netanyahu. I don't like Ben Shapiro talking about how these tariffs are so bad for Israel. It's so unfair. I don't like any of that stuff. I only care about America. But when I say America first, I mean I'd much rather see the interests of American Jews represented in the interests of Israeli Jews. The same thing when the left blames all just white people for their whiteness and their white privilege. I'm so sick of my character being called into question because of my race. And people say you should be proud of your race or that you should be ashamed of your race. The left says that we should be ashamed of being white, while they themselves say that they should be proud of being of color. But riddle me this: how is it that anyone should be either ashamed or proud of an immutable characteristic that has nothing to do with any decision they've ever made or any content of their character? Why would I be proud to be white? I didn't have any say in that. I just came out white. Why would I be ashamed to be white? I didn't have any say in that. There's like this famous scene from Game of Thrones where he says, I am not beholden to my father's oaths, and I'm not accountable for my father's sins. But what they want to do is they want to marry the values that they're trying to undermine to a minority race, the white race, so that they're one and the same, just like they married Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin. In the eyes of the left, they're the same person. Now they've married in Elon Musk and Adolf Hitler. All four of those people somehow are the same person, despite the fact that we're actually funding the Nazis in this conflict. So Hitler was all about those Ukrainians. But they marry the race to the ideals and the culture that they hate, that threatens them, that threatens their political ideology, and then they attack the race. It's a cheap shot because they understand that they can't make a sound argument against Western civilization. I mean, how can you argue against things like the Renaissance and reason and the existence of God and math and punctuality? I mean, they literally said that punctuality was racist. Being on time is racist. You can't attack those things and sound reasonable. You have to marry all those things subconsciously to a race or to an identity, and then you attack the identity. And it happens both ways all the time. We see it. But the amount of subversion and intentionality required to go into it is a conspiracy, the likeness of which I don't think I've ever seen. And it's perpetuated internationally by some shadowy cabal that it's really hard to point your finger at. You can see the players like the Soroses and the Klaus Schwabs and the Justin Trudeaus and the Mark Carneys and the Alex Soroses and the Keir Starmers and the Kamala Harrises and the Nancy Pelosi. You can see the players, but it's really hard to see who's actually playing the chessboard. You can see the pieces on the board moving around with some semblance of autonomy, but it's so difficult to understand how these complicated infrastructures are set up in such a way that allows for this asinine level of corruption and evil and just blatant lies. And what's troubling more is if we don't know who's actually behind everything, what's actually perpetuating everything, then it's impossible to hold these entities or organizations accountable. I guess it begs the question, if you can't tell or don't know who it is, then probably an intelligence community. It's probably a spy ring. It's probably the CIA. I don't know. But I want to show you clip 21. This is Musk saying why it is that the left wants to kill him. Let's watch. 21.
Countries You're working on helping the blind see and all of these other things. Is it really come down to the basic, you're aligned with President Donald Trump, who also is a friend of mine, and that you have identified well over $100 billion in waste, fraud, abuse that our federal government never should have been spending? Is that what it comes down to?
Yeah, it turns out when you take away people's, what the money they're receiving fraudulently, they get very upset, and they They basically want to kill me because I'm stopping their fraud, and they want to hurt Tesla because we're stopping.
Yep, that's exactly what's going on. And I actually want to show you this clip. This is 23. The same reason they're coming after the tariffs is the same reason they're going after Elon Musk.
China are so destructive of their economies. Why is China booming? How did India become an economic powerhouse when it has these exorbitant tariffs on American imports? How did Vietnam, of all places, become such a different country, even though it has these prohibitive tariffs? Why isn't Germany, before its energy problems, why wasn't it a wreck? It's got tariffs on almost everything that we send them. How is the EU even functioning with these tariffs? I thought tariffs destroyed an economy, but they seem to like them. And they're angry that they're no longer asymmetrical. Apparently, our people who are tariffing us think tariffs improve their economy. Maybe they're right. I don't know. The second thing is, why would you get angry at the person who is reacting to the asymmetrical tariff and not the people who inaugurated the tariff? Why is Canada mad at us when it's running a $63 billion surplus and it has tariffs on some American products at 250%? Doesn't it seem like the people who started this asymmetrical, if I could use the word trade war, should be the culpable people, not the people who are reluctantly reacting to it? China
All right, folks, stay tuned for Alex Jones on the other side of this break with a breaking report. We've got about 41 seconds left. And I just want to remind you how important it is to support us at thealexjonesstore.com. I've been trying to plug once every segment, not too much to irritate the audience, but enough to just emphasize how important it is in the current environment when virtually everyone has incentive to go to war with everyone, and all of the members of the political class are weaponizing their massive resources to destroy our very way of life, our culture, our faith, and everything about us, even us ourselves. Go to thealexjonesstore.com right now, get Ultra Methylene Blue, and be the reason InfoWars will always be fighting the InfoWar.
Every product we sell at InfoWarsStore.com, when we're talking about the supplements, is the highest grade, highest quality, and extremely affordable price. Now, when we say that our formula is ultimate fish oil, it is the 3 best known forms of the best essential fatty acids that are known to come from fish and krill. So listen to what is in this formula. Wild anchovy, purified concentrated fish oil, pure Antarctic krill oil, that's the best krill, and krill's the highest of all of them, and high quality, also an excellent source, wild-caught salmon oil. So this is a synergy, very strong, and it's used and needed in the lining of your arteries, your veins, everything. This is essential to all the other great compounds God has given us to be extremely healthy, but particularly so. That's why even mainline doctors tell people, hey, get a high-quality, high-end form of fish oil. Because even if you're eating beef and things, you're still not getting really the amazing essential fatty acids that you get from high-end krill oil and fish oil. And you'll notice if you take a few before bedtime, the dreams are amazing as well. Separately, there's a lot of other products available that are fan favorites that have come back into stock but limited supplies at InfoWarsStore.com, like Pain MD, natural, really strong, great pain reliever. Believe me, you'll love it. Get it. Vitamin Mineral Fusion, vitamin C with zinc, super concentrated Linus Pauling formula. Brain Force Ultra, the amazing proprietary nootropic that hits in 15 minutes but goes away in 3 or 4 hours. That way you can take